One of the most common upgrades given to mutants in the Fred Wolf cartoon was intelligence, with just a few exceptions. But with intelligence also comes reason, and a new life with ethical responsibilities. However, the 1987 cartoon had one mutated alligator that was given intelligence, cultural identity, and a conscience. Yet he used all those gifts to become one of the turtles' most dangerous enemies. So, was he really a villain, or just a predator who never stopped hunting? Join me as we explore the 1987 Leatherhead, the terror of the swamp. The original Leatherhead was created by Ryan Brown for Tales of the Tmnt No. 6 back in 1988. However, a few interesting twists were added when the character was adapted into the Fred Wolf cartoon. Writer Michael Reeves reworked the backstory to connect the Leatherhead with the Punk Frogs, mutants he had already introduced the season before. The cartoon version also had a thick Cajun accent, seemingly borrowed from a local trapper. And with it came a whole list of catchphrases, many of which were likely inspired by Cajun celebrity chef Justin Wilson, including Leatherhead's most iconic line.
I guarantee it's gonna make it.
I guarantee.
Those lines were brought to life by voice actor Jim Cummings, and on one occasion, Peter Renaday. Both had Louisiana roots, which explains why Leatherhead's accent was so unforgettable. But this didn't mean Ryan Brown wasn't involved anymore. Judging by Errol McCarthy's sketches for the action figure, it seemed like Leatherhead needed a little bit more characterization for his jump into the toy line. Playmates asked Ryan Brown to redesign the character with more details, so he submitted a drawing partially inspired by Ezekiel Torque, the Cajun swamp dweller from the Man-Thing comics. Ryan would go on to adapt Leatherhead again for the Archie comics, this time with a brand new backstory, though he kept the same look. But that's a story for another video. Back to the toy line. Leatherhead's long tail and snout made him a packaging nightmare. He couldn't fit into the blister pack like the other figures, so they had to position him diagonally. Now, I'm not sure if Michael Reeves knew at the time that the Okefenokee Swamp, where the frogs in Leatherhead were from, also had a celebrity alligator. Okefenokee Joe, named after a singer and activist, was an 11.5-foot American alligator believed to have lived approximately 80 years in that area. Unfortunately, Joe the Gator died recently in 2021. Part of me suspects that Michael knew of his existence because, in his story, Leatherhead was already a legendary alligator. He was so legendary, in fact, that Michael Reeves opened his episode with a Cajun trapper obsessively hunting a massive albino alligator, like he was his very own Moby Dick. In the cartoon, mutations were influenced by the last contact with another creature, but Leatherhead's transformation was a bit of a stretch to that rule. After he scared the trapper off, Leatherhead took possession of his paddle, which must have had enough DNA to make him humanoid once he swam through some contaminated waters. This was the same mutagen that transformed the Punk Frogs, but in his case, it turned him into an apex predator who captured the frogs and enslaved them. While Leatherhead was taking one of his power naps, Rasputin managed to call the turtles for help. Knowing that April and Irma were already vacationing in Florida, the turtles felt inclined to crash with them. But Leatherhead's actions also called the attention of Shredder and Krang, who saw potential in him for their fight against the turtles. However, nothing played the way it was supposed to. April and the turtles ended up walking right into one of Leatherhead's traps and had to be rescued by the frogs they came to save. Together, they captured Leatherhead and started walking to the edge of the swamp to turn the creature over to the authorities. But Leatherhead wasn't just strong, he was clever. He tricked them into falling into a quicksand trap, though not clever enough to avoid sinking in it himself. Luckily for him, Shredder arrived just in time to pull him out, and left everyone else to sink. Grateful, Leatherhead decided to follow Shredder's lead. The turtles and the frogs eventually escaped and sent Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady to the Technodrome. He slithered back into the swamp, waiting for the right moment to get his revenge. But of course, he couldn't get revenge from the swamp, so he went to New York to find, and possibly make gumbo out of, the turtles. Unfortunately for him, the city was the Rat King's domain, and Leatherhead walked right into one of his traps. It was a surprising twist, an apex predator taken down by rats. Not because they were stronger, but because there were so many of them. Completely humiliated, Leatherhead was captured while the Rat King continued working on his latest plan, a mind-controlling gas. But the Rat King wasn't exactly in his right mind, and it didn't take long for Leatherhead to escape and resume his hunt. This didn't last long, as the Rat King didn't take his escape lightly, and before long, war broke out between the two. The turtles used that hatred to their advantage, luring both villains into an explosive trap that jettisoned Leatherhead into the East River. After his defeat, he promised to stay in the swamp and hopefully never see a turtle ever again, a promise he wouldn't keep. And that's not the only thing Leatherhead changed his mind about. He also joined forces with the Rat King in a full-blown plan to take over the city. To me, this was a significant shift that was only possible thanks to his mutation. Leatherhead could have stayed an apex predator in the swamp, but he actively decided to team up with the enemy of his enemy to rule the city. Also, all these episodes were written by different people, so I'm sure that was a factor as well. Their plan was to create an army of giant rat and alligator robots and take advantage of the turtles breaking up, which is a story for another video. The duo was almost successful, but they made a few mistakes. In the end, Master Splinter used his mental control abilities, which he definitely had up to this point, to command the rats and make them destroy the robot army. After being defeated, the two villains went separate ways, and it's unclear if Leatherhead stayed in the city or went back to the swamp. Leatherhead's final appearance in the show was in a team-up episode I already covered, The Night of the Rogues. In that one, Shredder decided he was tired of Bebop and Rocksteady, and assembled a new crew to keep the turtles busy while he unearthed an intergalactic treasure buried under New York. This new crew included the Rat King, Slash, Tempestra, Scumbug, Anthrax, Chrome Dome, and of course, Leatherhead. Apparently, they were all in it for a cut of the treasure, so by this point, Leatherhead had clearly moved on from a swamp life and gone full mercenary. They actually managed to beat the turtles for a bit, but things turned around once the turtles got help from their allies. The treasure was destroyed, and without a payout, the rogues lost interest and went their separate ways. That was the last time we saw Leatherhead in the cartoon, and his fate was left unknown for decades. That long silence finally ended, thanks to the Saturday Morning Adventures comic. Since the stories in that book take place between seasons 7 and 8, we can officially place Leatherhead's return after Night of the Rogues. So yes, he went back to the swamp. The story itself was just another thingamajig that lost its way while being transported from Dimension X, this time making it into Leatherhead's hands. The mutant alligator used this powerful device to get revenge on Attila, Rasputin, Raphael, and Donatello. Like the Shredder, the last two were there looking for the device. It was a short story, and after the device stopped working, Leatherhead went back to the wild, being chased by a cloud of angry wasps. This was surely the first of many more appearances in the book. At the time of this recording, Leatherhead was last seen in the 40th anniversary special, fighting the turtles in the sewers. This version of Leatherhead has shown up in a few video games, like the Manhattan Project, Turtles in Time, the Hyperstone Heist, Mutant Madness, and Shredder's Revenge. As for action figures, he received some love from NECA, not just with a cartoon-accurate version, but also a Turtles in Time repaint. The Playmates figure was also updated by Super 7 in what is probably one of their biggest figures of the line. Overall, this version of Leatherhead felt a bit inconsistent and underutilized. This made understanding him harder than the other characters in the show. Comparing him with the original version, that Leatherhead was a creature torn between his instinct and his conscience, a predator trying to be better than what he was. But the Fred Wolf version wasn't torn at all. Mutation gave him a consciousness, cultural identity, and intelligence, and he intentionally used all of that to dominate, scheme, and destroy. He went beyond his initial role as an apex predator, perhaps inspired by the Rat King, to become a ruler of the city. Something the Turtles never allowed him to do, probably making that challenge even more desirable to him. This made this version of Leatherhead a clear villain, something that differentiates him from most of the other versions of the character. So he wasn't conflicted, and he wasn't misunderstood. He was a villain by choice, and a creature you didn't want to cross paths with. That, I guarantee. What did you think about Leatherhead's evolution into a villain? How does he compare to other versions for you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.